If you're looking for a video to show you quickly and easily how to change the oil in your F-150 truck, this is the video for you. First thing we're going to do is pop open the hood. Next, we need to access the oil drain plug in the oil pan. To do that, we need to remove this protective lining, this tray that's underneath. And to do that, there's 4 5/16 bolts that we need to remove. And so I'm just using my impact driver, but you can use whatever tool you have available to fit these, and remove these 4 bolts and remove the protective tray here, and then we can access the drain plug. Alright, so here's a good look at the drain plug. You can see it's right here at the back of the oil pan. That's what we'll be loosening up to drain the oil. This crossbar in the way, it's a little awkward to access it, but you can work it out, it's not too bad. Make sure you have something to catch the oil, so as soon as you pull that out, it can catch it. It's a little messy with this bar. Not a huge deal, but it seems like if that bar was just a couple inches somewhere else, then it wouldn't make nearly as the mess that it does. If there's a better way to do that, somebody let me know in the comments. But here we go. So just let it drain all the oil out, and we'll move on to the next step. Now it's time to remove the oil filter housing so we can replace the oil filter cartridge. To do that, we're using a 1 1/16 inch socket to loosen and remove the housing. So here's your actual oil filter. I refer to it as a cartridge just to keep things simple for everybody. For those that are used to oil filters that are all in one piece and you screw them on, this one has the separate part that actually holds it in, and then it has that part which is the actual oil filter, which I refer to as a cartridge. You can see that it's definitely time to make a change. I'm using an aftermarket brand, STP. It's good to use the factory part, but in this case I just wanted something that was still good quality and designed for higher mileage. I'm going to switch up to a high mileage full synthetic motor oil, and I don't want to have to change the oils often, so instead of changing it every 3,000 miles, I'm looking to change it a little bit longer, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 miles, even though the oil filter is rated for 10,000 miles and the oil itself is rated for 5,000 miles plus before another oil change. So just doing that to make my life a little easier. You could definitely go with the stock products and just change it out more often, every 3,000 miles, if you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that is not in the best interest of your engine. So moving on, I am now inserting the new cartridge, the actual oil filter, and I will show you the next thing we need to do with this housing, as I'm calling it. We need to replace the O-rings. This part's really important because if those O-rings are worn out, then it could cause leaking when you retighten this back in. So what you want to do is manipulate out this little O-ring here at the top, and then you want to also replace the other 2 large O-rings that I will show you next. So I just find a way to gently move it. It doesn't really matter on this one, but I don't want to damage the plastic. So I don't really care about the O-ring itself, but we don't want to damage, scratch, dent, warp the plastic at all. That way this thing still has a good seal and there's no issues. The larger O-rings come off a little easier. Once you get them lifted up a little bit, you can just kind of work them with your fingers and just pull them right off. Now it's time to put the new O-rings in that you should get with your replacement oil filter. Make sure you have these before starting the job, and make sure you do replace these. It's just not worth the risk of having an oil leak if you don't. Really easy to do. I just put a little bit of oil on them, kind of get them ready to go before I put them on, and then just pop them on in place. it's time to put the oil drain plug back in. Just like before, it's a little awkward. I found it easier to use two hands from one side to get it started. And this isn't like the old school drain plugs where you tighten them down with a wrench or anything like that. You just return it back to the same way it was when you first pulled it off. It's not very difficult. It doesn't take a lot of turning. You just want to turn it. You'll kind of feel it snug into place, and it should line up the same way that it was previously before you took it off. So you'll feel it and you'll be able to see it. Make sure that it's right. Okay, so now it's time for me to pull out all the stuff from underneath. I made a little bit of a mess. Doing it next time, could always lay some extra cardboard down or some other stuff to catch some of the splatter, since it kind of splashes off that bar. But anyways, I'll clean this up a little bit and then we'll continue moving on. Now it's time to put the bottom pan or tray back on. To do that, we're just going to hold it up in place, line up the bolts, and then just start to thread them in a little bit so it will hold it up. Then we'll come back through, tighten them all down, almost all the way using the impact, but I like to leave the last little bit of tightening to do by hand, so I just don't over tighten these. They're not big bolts. So I'll just proceed with caution at the end, snug these all up, and then we'll be done underneath the truck. Usually when I put the new oil filter in, I like to fill it with a little bit of oil so it's not empty when I first start the engine. However, with this design and the way that it goes in on the top, there's not a way to do that. So go ahead and put the housing or the cap back on, and then I will hand tighten it all the way down till it starts to get snug and hard to turn. And then I'll get my torque wrench. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, you can still do this without it. And as a matter of fact, a lot of times with something like this, I'll go by the feel, because you have a couple of different O-rings and it will turn easily until it won't. And so I did find a couple of different specs. 18 pounds of torque was the most common one. I did see a 13-pound torque somewhere else too. I could have took more time and looked in the manual, but what I did is I put it to where as you're turning it, it will bottom out, and then I just snugged it up. And that's right around 18 pounds of torque. So either way, it worked out and it was fine. If you don't have a torque wrench, I wouldn't worry about it. If you do, then you can go with 18 pounds of torque unless it feels like it's getting too tight for you. We're at the home stretch now. Time to remove the oil filler cap and add some oil. It takes 6 quarts. Now you're about to see me make a mess because I couldn't find my funnel. Now I highly recommend you do use a funnel, but I didn't want to take the time to go all the way across the street to go get another funnel, so here we go. All in all, I didn't do too bad. Didn't really spill too much, and it worked out. Don't forget to put the oil filler cap back on. Alright, so I'm in the truck. I'm going to go ahead and start it up. And I'm going to look and make sure that the oil pressure comes up right away, first and foremost. Make sure there wasn't some sort of issue. And now that looks good, you can see my oil change required light is on. So to do that, we're going to go into the menu and go ahead and reset it by going into Settings, Advanced Settings, Vehicle, Oil Life Reset, and you can see now it's 100%. And that's it. Job well done. I appreciate you taking time to watch my video. I hope you found it helpful and informative. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I'll see you in the next one.